Well, good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning, Jake. I am fine. I'm a little tired from travel yesterday. I'm in fabulous Junction City, Kansas right now.
Ooh, I was in Los Angeles, and I bet I dealt with more traffic in LA than you dealt with in Kansas.
Yeah, but all my traffic was giant trucks doing 75.
hmm
Yeah.
Well, I got a lot of mileage out of talking to a group and saying that you went to USC, as did Fred, as did I, which
As I
is
do.
kind of funny, right?
Yep.
And just so everybody knows, I know that this will be surprising to everybody watching, but Mike and I went to USC at different times. Very surprising to everybody, I'm sure. Okay, so
Yeah, because your
so Mike,
beard isn't completely white yet.
yet yesterday I got my first white eyebrow hair. So there you go. All
Uh,
right, I know. Don't tell my wife. And don't say we'll edit this part. Oh shoot, this is live. All right. Anyway,
uh.
so what happened to your credit card?
So I got what I thought was, a phishing, text,
Yeah.
and it said, "Hey, this is B of A, and your card ending in the correct numbers had
hmm
these transactions. If were these yours? Yes or no?" And I replied, "No." And he goes, "Okay, if you want to, we got it. If you want to talk to us, here's the number to call." And verified that it was actually B of A.
It was
Talked to
actually
them. They
B of
were
A.
really good about it. They went through the transactions, and I said, "No, I did not buy racing supplies. I did not buy pizza in Georgia." And so they disputed those and said, "Okay, your card's locked. New card's on the way. We'll expedite it. You get it in 3 days. But the day I'm supposed to travel, having my card hosed up is just bad."
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
mm, so
Yep.
and looking through, I was talking to this person and said, where were the cities where these transactions were attempted, and one was actually approved and two were declined,
hmm
and or I think it's the other way around. And they said, well, this one was in Georgia, and this one was and these other two were online. And I said, oh, Georgia's where our perp is, but more importantly, that tells me it wasn't local, like a skimmer or
Right.
somebody at a restaurant, that just wrote it down. This was from one of the big breaches.
Yeah.
So, I'm there with everybody else.
Well, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Hey, so in the last week, we have had two interesting conversations about insider threats. In
Hmm.
one, an organization uh, talked about one of their employees having been propositioned
Mm.
by by somebody offering money, and in another, they had an employee who may have been disgruntled allow a malicious person into the network using one of the using a remote desktop program,
Mm.
and the bad guy actually did exfiltrate data in that case. And interestingly, and you were part of one of those conversations. Mike, what one, what do you make of that? Like, is this on the rise?
Yeah, it's on the
Um,
rise. Oh yeah.
and two, like, so what do companies do to say, whoa, like what to pay attention to that? How do you stop
Well,
that?
so I mean, there's two issues there, right? One is the bribery, right?
hmm
And if you are, you got one foot out the door already, that's probably pretty attractive, or if you think you're on the chopping block, right? And you've seen all the layoffs that have happened in the tech sector. Um, the other one is the disgruntled employee. And by the way, is it possible to be gruntled?
Yes, it
I
is.
think it is. Yes. Okay.
I always think of you as gruntled.
I'm a gruntled person. Okay.
You're a gruntled.
That one's a little tougher. And that one I think is where it's kind of important, and I hate to say this, to if you can identify somebody as being potentially enamored with this idea of doing something on your way out the door, even if it's voluntarily letting in bad guys, whether or not there was money exchanged, right? You just want to do it.
hmm
If there are ways to identify those folks as they're on the chopping block, they've expressed unhappiness, they're blah blah blah, um, and start maybe surveil is probably not the right term, but checking out their social media and some of their other activities, and potentially aggregating things like physical entry data, right? Card
Hmm.
key access data. People have a tendency when they're you know kind of leaving, show up at different times, to come in different doors.
Yeah,
Maybe you might be, access failures at places. I mean, there are ways to identify through just aberrational patterns somebody that might be prone to doing this.
sure. And I mean, also, one of the guys I was talking to said, also there's data governance, like figuring out, what does that person actually have access to, and should they have access to as much data as they do, and then 24/7 monitoring, so if there is an
Yeah.
exfiltration at 1 a.m., you know about it. You don't find out, a week later or a month later, or you don't find out because all the information shows up on the dark web, or you get a call from a customer saying,
That doesn't prevent anything though, right? I mean,
no,
that,
it doesn't, but at least and at least you can take action, right?
yeah,
I mean, worse not to know.
it's worse not to know. It's, better for it not to happen.
Sure.
And I think, and you're right, 24/7 monitoring, but not necessarily monitoring for exfiltration events, for aberrational patterns of behavior on employees that
Sure.
you may have marked as having this potential.
Yeah, 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 like,
And this is all very creepy. We should probably talk about something else. So
All right. We have a
I'll
lot. We have
go.
we have a lot of other things to talk about. You actually just did an interview with Bloomberg. You want to tell people about
Mere
that?
moments ago, yeah. Well, they're interested in the so like the SEC regulations coming out where they're saying 4-day reporting and things like
Hmm.
that, and the enforcement of the False Claims Act, which we've talked about a lot, and the fact that CMMC 2.0, right, the Cyber Security Maturity Model
Hmm.
Certification, and the
Hmm.
fact that that's audited, and that's how the federal government uses the power of the purse
Hmm.
to make change. And then there's all of the sector specific agencies entering into the rulemaking process so that we can get our arms around critical infrastructure like we have never really properly done.
Yeah.
That's all the things we talked about. And you know frankly, I think everybody's going to have to belly up to the plate here. It's just, so there are so many organizations. America runs on small business. Well, small business, you're low hanging fruit, and I'm sorry to say this, somebody's got to make you do the right things.
Yeah. Yep. 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 All right. The other thing we want to talk about is there have been a lot of hacks, a lot of big name, companies.
The gift that just keeps on
Yeah.
giving with some of them too.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, what's the latest with LastPass?
Well, so they made their third disclosure, right? And a lot of people think that this is one event that happened, but the dribby drabs of information are coming out as they discover, right, forensically, that these things happen. And now they're saying they got the encrypted backups. So that's another thing, right? They got the vaults, but now they're saying encrypted backups as well. So that's bad. And I'm not really sure what, this is brand new, and I'm not really sure what the implications of this are yet. How difficult it would be to recover
Hmm.
those backups from the encrypted state. But if the vaults they have can be cracked and the passwords to decrypt the backups are in the vaults, then there you go.
Go change your passwords. All right, and then Mailchimp.
Yeah, well, Mailchimp, more than anything else, the data taken lends itself to phishing customers more than anything else. But
Sure.
the bigger story is, this is, customers support tools, enterprise tools are being hacked.
Yeah.
And it's, a long lesson learned from that started with SolarWinds, when they were able to backdoor the software and, compromise everybody that used it. So again, I think the interesting thing to me though is, so we know T-Mobile lost, 37 million records. They said, well, there's no financial data in there. And we talked about the fact here repeatedly that there is this class of attorneys now that's waiting for these data breaches to occur, and then they quickly file a class action suit. 2 class action suits have been filed, right? We found out about this last week on Thursday from T-Mobile's SEC filing. Okay. uh by Monday, or I guess Tuesday, 2 class action suits have been filed. So
Yep.
there you go.
Yep. 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 Oh, and you mentioned in the webinar we did about political campaign.
Oh yeah, that's so again, we have talked about how all of this, activist stuff going on, and the fact that if some organization or person runs afoul of what you consider to be your social norms or your cause or whatever, now you got skills, you go after them. Well, some GOP senator's campaign lost close to $700,000, and the jury is out, if I can use that term, as to whether this is vanilla criminal activity, or if this is political activism saying, you know we don't like your side of the aisle, so we're gonna come steal your campaign money. We don't know
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. Yep. And health sector. A lot going on there. I'm heading to American Hospital Association Rural Conference in a
I'm
little
talking
bit
to a
with
hospital
you.
board today.
You're
That's why I'm
talking to
in
a
Kansas.
hospital board today. Meanwhile, you know, despite the ransomware operators saying we're not going to attack hospitals, which is a lie, they are.
Some say they won't, but there's a lot of these groups out there. Story yesterday, today, something like that. There's a hospital in Illinois where the straw that broke the camel's back was a ransomware attack. Now, they had all kinds of other financial difficulties, but this was the thing that did it. They have suspended operations, hospital in Illinois. So
It's awful. I mean, it's
it is.
awful,
It
and
is.
it's maddening. It's maddening. And this new study that says, you know, was it 45% of IT healthcare professionals say ransomware impairs patient care?
Yeah,
Well, what about the other 55%? They don't think ransomware impacts patient care. Of course, ransomware impacts patient care.
it
I,
has to. I
I,
mean, you know, in fact, the big one was Common Spirit,
yeah.
and right, and they're facing another lawsuit as well, right? But Common Spirit, as kind of an umbrella organization that supplied health record services to somewhere between 700 and 1,000 hospitals, everybody got flattened,
Hmm.
and including when I had to go have something done, and I walked out there, I said, doctor wants to see me again in 3 months. I go, we can't schedule you, everything is
Hmm.
down, you're gonna have to call us later.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a fact. My credit card is affected. My health is affected. They're coming after me.
And your schools, speaking of which, speaking of being in LA, the LA Unified School District, big disclosure there.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember in the beginning they said, and this was over a holiday too. In the beginning they said, over the weekend we noticed this activity. We quickly shut it down. Now they say, well, they were in there for a month before we noticed the activity. It happened to be on a
Hmm.
weekend. We did take steps then, but and I don't think this is intentional, obfuscation of the events. I think this is, it takes time to figure out what happened here. And that's why this SEC and the other, you must report in 4 days, 3 days, whatever.
Hmm.
That's why it doesn't really make that much sense.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I mean, you know, and then, by the way, speaking of frustrating things for local governments, where's the federal money?
I have found that 10 states have submitted their plans, for their all of state, how they're going to do this. And, it's going to start moving. But again, I know at least one state that's definitely doing it wrong. And I think there's going to be some kind of dispute with the federal government about this. And there are some states that are going, nah, we're just not going to do it. Right. The reporting
Oh,
requirements are too much. And so, but they are inching forward. There are things that are going to start to happen. If 10 states have completed their all of state planning in what, 3 months rather than taking a whole year, that's actually somewhat positive.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we know local governments, water districts, utilities need the money, right? They
Yeah.
need the money to get to be able to prepare for an attack, detect an attack, respond to an attack. And, I just hope we can get through this red tape so they get the money so that they can do the things they need to do.
And well, and that procurement is not going to be nightmarish.
Right. 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 Of course. Of course. Speaking of government stuff, big announcement from NIST.
Oh, which one? Oh, they're updating the cybersecurity framework.
Yeah. Speaking of
Yeah,
prepare, detect, respond.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Hey, recover, recover.
And
Uh,
recover. Yep.
yeah, and I think what I read was that it's going to have a lot to do with third party risk management
Mm.
more than even before. There's a
Well, I
question
mean, it
on there
makes a
now.
lot of sense, as
Yeah,
we've talked about last
that's what's
class
happening.
and MailChimp and Blackbaud. And yeah.
Yeah, 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 and speaking of governments and nation states.
Hmm.
I just read this morning. This has not been in the news blast yet. This will be in the news blast tomorrow. But um, they have now figured out that in total the North Koreans took something like $1 billion out of in cryptocurrency that they stole, right?
Wow.
By compromising wallets and exchanges and doing all that stuff that they do. That's a much bigger number than I think anybody thought.
It
And,
is.
you got to think through the economics there, right? So apparently it goes to, weapons programs. Well, it cost them something to employ,
Hmm.
all of the hackers that did that. So I don't know what their net is. I don't know what their margin is on that $1 billion that's actually going to get applied to the weapons programs. But that sure is a big number,
I'm sure
man.
it's a big number. And hey, and speaking of international politics, every week when we do this, I'm like, hey, what's up with Russia, Ukraine? Any updates this week?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you know about the tanks and all that stuff going on, right?
Sure, sure. I mean
Uh,
the cyber stuff. Tanks are not cyber.
but did you know that Ukraine has signed an agreement to join the NATO Cyber Defense Center?
No.
So this is like, they keep moving forward towards NATO.
Hmm.
And, every time they get closer, there's all this, more threatening stuff. And there's apparently some kind of warship on the way that's got, towards the US that has nuclear capability. So don't everybody freak out. But, as Ukraine continues to get pummeled, not only by cyber attacks, but,
Hmm. Hmm.
shelling, they need to cozy up to NATO, and that exacerbates the problem. And there have been other uh, multiple articles over the preceding week about how poorly equipped we are as a country, especially the private sector, the critical sectors, things like that, to deal with this cyber warfare business, right?
Yep.
If this really spills over, um, there's other articles too that say, this really isn't that big of a deal. They're not that effective. Um, I don't think we've seen all the capabilities that could be leveled at things like, our rail system. And, frankly, all the I'm thinking about this as I'm driving down the interstate here.
Sure.
All these trucks are constantly communicating back, right? They
Right.
know that a trucker is supposed to drive for 14 hours and then take 10 hours off, right? And
Yep.
all this stuff is monitored all the time. Well, that creates an exposure.
Sure.
And we saw what happened with supply chains. Well, that might be what cyber warfare tries to hit. And in fact, there's the Russians hit nuclear research facilities
Sure.
unsuccessfully, but they went after a number of them.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right. We're running out of time here. Threats and vulns. What do you got?
Uh, um, VMware, critical flaws, and it's about log file management. Like, don't remember the details, but definitely VMware needs an upgrade.
Hmm.
Um, Git has done a source code audit and found critical vulnerabilities there. Why didn't you guys do that audit earlier? Um, a whole bunch of, and I've actually seen this in the Pisces data. A whole bunch, 4,500, something like that. WordPress sites have been hacked and are redirecting people to, let's just say, sketchy ad pages. Uh, this one is really bad. It's not getting enough press, I don't think. Samsung Galaxy Store, okay, the App Store. The App Store app itself, okay, the Galaxy Store app is found vulnerable to sneaky, compromised app installs and different kinds of fraud. So you can't even trust the Samsung App Store, which I don't think I've ever used the Samsung App Store myself. Um, there's some malware going around that hijacks the DNS settings on Wi-Fi routers, and if you own the resolver, right, where you look up DNS, you own everything. I look up B of A and it doesn't give me the real B of A; it takes me to the fake B of A site, right? If you own DNS, you own the world.
Yep.
That's a real bad one too. And last one that really caught my eye was um, one of the new targets for cyber thieves are retirement accounts,
Mm.
right? And our older population is not equipped to know that the internet lies, right? And they come from a generation where everybody was truthful, and that's just not the way it is anymore. So going after retirement accounts for our elder population is a bad problem.
Mm. By the way, I don't know if everyone was truthful, but people were more trusting.
Hmm.
Kicker,
Okay.
Mike, at the end of all of these, after saying that, you give us something to make us smile. What do you got?
Well, this is just fascinating more than funny or ironic, but you know, do you remember Terminator 2
I do. One of the
and
best movies ever.
one of the best movies ever? I agree.
Mm.
And remember how the Terminator it was liquid metal and could like
Mm-hmm.
move through the bars in the
Right,
jail,
right,
and the
right, right,
gun
right.
got caught, and they've actually made a robot just like that. Okay, scientists have made a liquid metal robot that can actually escape a cage like a Terminator. Okay, and these machines, if you can call them that, are controlled by magnetic fields. And so they're looking at all the potential uses of this, new biomedical engineering technologies,
Mm-hmm.
targeted drug delivery, circuit assembly, things like that. But damn, dude, are we here already? Wow.
Wow.
What year was that supposed to be in? Terminator 2, what year was that supposed to be? I think
No, 2022. I don't know.
maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it already happened. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we're all just living
Well,
in the
hopefully the
matrix.
other predictions from that film do not come true.
All right. And with that, we'll send you back to Skynet, everybody. Have a good
Back to
day.
Skynet, it becomes self-aware on January, well, maybe today, I don't know. All right.
Yeah, it is January. Okay. All right. Bye
All
bye,
right.
everybody.